I want to be a little bit controversial here and kind of go back to this question that I want to address with you, because I think it can be very helpful and valuable to really self-reflect for many of us in our industry. I completely agree that we're doing some great things in rare diseases, changing people's lives. But I would love for you to provide some insights on how our industry has evolved and how you would like it to improve and transform in the future in terms of culture, in terms of internal politics and collaboration and engagement or lack thereof, which is a hot topic these days. Right. So how has it evolved, and what would you like to improve, to see transformed in the future?
Well, I think, look at the industry. It's where it's been, where it's going, look at the environment that it existed in, right? Look at the environment in the 80s and 90s as an example. There's a lot of focus on science. Merck was 7 times the Fortune Company of the Year, right? Things were growing, expanding rapidly, left and right. When I first started out, there were 20,000 sales reps. There was a lot of opportunity. Companies are expanding. There's promotion opportunities. There's new brands. There's opportunity to work on the brands. And the companies at that time really were more focused, I think, on the priorities that were more balanced. It was a lot, and George Merck, founder of Merck, said patients before profits. And when we were a part of Merck, I heard that 150,000 times, if not more. People used to talk about it all the time, right? And the environment was different. So at the time, doctors were primarily the decision makers, full stop, right? Most of them were independent, or they were just small groups, practitioners. Most people paid for their own medication, or they had an insurance company that paid for a part of the medication. And the market was exploding. I think a pivotal moment of change came about in the mid-90s with regard to promotion. And that's actually 2 things happened. One is Procardia XL was going to lose its patent. And that was Pfizer's largest product for blood pressure, nifedipine, delivered in the gastrointestinal system, where it had like a little pill with a laser hole drilled in it, and it would squirt out, right, the medication. Well, then they came out with Norvasc, amlodipine, and that was a better product. But they needed to convert utilization over from Procardia XL to Norvasc. Well, they made an enormous investment in launching that product. Prior to Norvasc's launch, it cost a launch typically would be about a $20 to $25 million line item. By the time your launch meeting, your media, your material, your MISs, your trials, etc. But the commercial part is like 20, 25 million. The launch of Norvasc was over 250 million. It's more than 10 times. Now, Pfizer was smart because they knew they had a lot riding on it. So I think they did a good thing. But that's kind of where other companies, Pfizer was always a leader, where other companies were saying, okay, this is a profitable business model. We can invest more money in it, and we can promote more. We continue to develop more, but we can promote more, and we can get more value out of these products. We can commercially get more value. So that's when you saw sales force expansion. And again, the second, to me, one of the second most important things, Prilosec, direct-to-consumer advertising. So all this promotion's going on, and all these products are out there. And then I started, there's 20,000 reps. Within a few years, there were 140,000 reps, 7 times as many reps, right?
Boom.
Same number of doctors. And we as an industry ask ourselves why we ruined access, right? But I love the old African saying, when the elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. Mm-hmm. Right? If I was seeing 5 reps before and now I'm supposed to see 35 as a doctor a day, right, can't do it, right? So I think that was one thing. We were in this growth mindset, right? Very appropriate. Mm-hmm. I think what's happened over time is you see the physician autonomy has become very low. Like the ability of a doctor to make the decision is much lower. In 2008, 3/4 of doctors worked for themselves or as a part of a group of doctors. right?
Right.
Only 25% worked for a company, like a hospital. In 2012, it was even, 50-50. In 2014, 3/4 of the doctors worked for a company, a corporation, a hospital, an integrated delivery network, a staff model HMO. So the decision process followed the money, right? And we also went from an environment where formularies were not as much managed to an environment where formulary management was key, right? So very different in the industry's ability to impact that prescribing and their reimbursement. One thing. I think the other is, we kind of got past the mega drug, the mega launch era, mega brands, right? Pfizer was $10 billion with Lipitor before it was generic. Prilosec was $5 billion. Nexium was $6 billion. Crestor was $5 billion. And all those went generic. And it was like all the pharmacy directors were sitting there waiting for the day that those went generic to start cutting the pharmacy budget. Well, the pharmaceutical industry figured out that the business in the future was oncology, rare disease, and those type of products. Expensive, high, small demand, orphan demand, but incredibly high unmet medical need. The ability to charge a greater amount for the product because, right, it was a much greater need, a much smaller market. And you saw companies kind of go toward that environment to a greater degree, away from the mega brands. Suddenly the pharmacy managers who've been calculating all these savings,
right,
budgets blew up. And it's because all the rare disease products, the MS drugs, all the oncology products, right? They're life-saving, life-changing molecules, but they're new and they're expensive. So you begin to see the plans ratchet down control on that over time. But what you saw inside the companies was really, to me, the cultural difference is what really changed. This industry, in many instances, not all, seems to have gone from a growth mindset to more of a fixed mindset. And you probably read the book about mindset by Carol Dweck from Stanford. They're very different things. Growth mindset, you can continue, make the pie bigger. Fixed mindset, fixed pie. Get the biggest piece you can, right? And there are all sorts of other changes that happen in the industry. It's like human resources. In the 80s, 90s, a greater share of the pay of senior executives became at risk, which meant stock. So rightly, the motivation of those people kind of tended to focus more on growing the share price than anything else. That's how they're compensated, follow the money, right? And in doing that, they had to make decisions for the share price, right? Taxes in the US are too high. Move the company to a low tax region, the Caribbean, Switzerland, Canary Islands. Operating costs are too high. Take the jobs that you can offshore, send them to China and India, right? It made a lot of sense and from a financial perspective. But again, it's because the industry was so focused on that shareholder value, not as much on patients, communities, employees, et cetera. And I think that is not just this industry. It's almost that the Wall Street culture has begun to permeate all businesses, the more financialized they've all become.
I agree. Absolutely.
Right? And that's a different culture. So now imagine yourself working for one of these companies. You're in this new era, right? There's 10 people working on a particular initiative. Well, we can't afford 10 people anymore, or we're going to outsource half of it. Now there's only 7. And the next year there's only 5. And then there's only 3. And at some point, the people who are left are thinking, well, there could be 2 or even 1. What do I need to do to defend myself politically? How can I be a survivor? How do I need to cover myself, right?
Decisions become political rather than scientific.
Decisions become political rather than anything, right? And I think that change happened over the last few years. And what I hear from people I work with is there's more of that going on now than there was. Now, I want to recognize there's a lot of great pharma leaders. I mean, outstanding pharma leaders.
Absolutely. From
the AZ days, I remember, people who are very successful there now. Rod Wooten, Rick Suarez, Don Sawyer just came back. They're all great people. They're all wonderful leaders. They deserve to be where they are in those roles. Okay. I think about my time at Mallinckrodt. I look at Hugh O'Neill, as I mentioned earlier. Hugh's a great guy. He's brilliant. He's strategic. He's great to get along with. He's a great leader. He's very inspiring. But what you've seen over time is kind of Some of the people who've ended up in being a survivor, that's how they managed to make it up the ranks. And as we all know, your manager's your culture. So if someone got there by basically politics,
right,
their leadership and management style is going to be different. And the higher those people are, and the more of them that there are, have an impact on the culture of a company.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that that's what you see. It's very simply, it's when companies decided to go into this mode of continuous reorganization, people adapted to the new environment. The new environment is not focused on stakeholders and customers and communities and employees and patients. It was much more focused on on shareholders, right? And that has become a driver to the culture in, again, not just the pharmaceutical industry, but I would say in industry overall, right? Why is this important? It's important to know the environment that you are in and how you lead within that environment. Because like I talked about earlier, the people who are above you need to know that you're loyal to them, you support them, you're bringing solutions, and you're bringing them good examples of how you're executing their strategy. No matter how they're motivated, they need that. The more political they are, though, the more wins they need in terms of execution. You need to show them that what they want to have done is what is being done, right? It's really, really critically important. And I say in terms of managing laterally, relationships are critically important. You know, if you did, like I said before, and you've got 6 months of salary in the bank, you stay in the job as long as it fits you, or as long as the company believes that you fit, right? You don't act like you got to hold on to something, because inevitably holding on gets let go, right? It's you need to have a positive motivation, keep the people around you positive, and continue to drive those relationships. And then the people that are working on your team, you need to focus on the culture that you are going to create and shelter them from a lot of these other things that are going on, especially if they're field sales. Field sales doesn't want to know about the parlor games and the castle intrigue in headquarters. They don't want to know it. They don't need to know it. In fact, the more of it they know and put on Cafe Pharma, the more distracted everybody is, right? You want to keep people focused on what we're trying to deliver. And really, in that sense, why we're trying to deliver it. And that's ultimately for patients. So I think it's not, I always tell people, look, the environment's the environment. You learn to adapt. You adapt or you die, right? Understand that companies are different now. It doesn't mean they're bad. It doesn't mean those people are motivated wrong in some instances. It's because when they grew up, it's all they knew. Right? You just have to know how they think. And as you and I talked earlier, look, in business and in life, it doesn't matter if you like someone or not. If you can learn from them, learn. It's better if you can like them and respect them and want to be their friend, but that's not always going to be the case. Always use the opportunity to learn, and always read your environment and know how to adapt.
Yeah, that's a lot of great insight. What a great lesson there. And it seems like you are recognizing or would agree that there is somewhat of a movement. I mean, there is a swing in the pendulum to some extent, but what is the trend now? I mean, is there a change towards that growth, back to that growth mindset?
I think there is a change back to the growth mindset. I think that it's primarily powered through these smaller companies, though, like rare disease companies. It's mostly the companies that are literally like the brand new ones, where there's a lot of science.
Yeah.
And where there is, the thing about rare disease that's great is you actually do get really close to the patient. I mean, literally close to the patient. Yeah. And the more companies do that, and everybody, I've never seen a company, so funny, when I was on the vendor side, everybody said, we're the most patient-friendly company, patient-focused company there is. You know, it's just like when I was in marketing, every company I went to, they said, we have the worst approval process of anyone. We're the most conservative of anyone. I'm like, oh, no, you're not. Like, just calm down. But I think the more companies focus on the patient, I think that is that's going to make a difference. And I would also say this.
So patient advocacy and patient centricity, that's the future, right? That's
yeah. And I would also say this. It depends on how much of a how much weight does senior leadership really place on culture and employee engagement?
Yeah.
Really, really place on it. Like,
no, Dave,
not talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. If you really place value on that,
right.
You know, I talked about it. One of my biggest rules in hiring people is the no asshole rule. Pardon my language.
Yeah. No, thanks.
That's also a rule of mine for any team I've had. Like, the fastest way to get on my bad side when I was leading a team is to create a negative environment for your team or for others. Because all that does is create basically a cancer in your culture, right? If I were leading a pharmaceutical company right now, I'd want to know, who are the people whose teams are engaged with their leaders? Whose teams? I had a leader once who actually famously bragged to HR, said, my team would walk over hot coals for me. And let me tell you this, they would. They would. Mm-hmm. Now, good, bad, or indifferent, it's true. It's true. And I'm not saying you have to have that by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, that may be a little bit weird. But you at least need trust. Now, there's a company, I don't want to go advocating certain companies, but there's a company out there that does this by interviewing different levels in the company and across different functions to determine what this looks like. And they are remarkably good at it. And if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'll be glad to talk to you more about it. I just don't want to use your podcast as an advertisement.